Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be talking about shows.
Hold on.
And specifically, what really makes a good show. Now I know if you've been familiar with this channel or have seen like any of my recent videos, you'd know that I have become a really big fan of talking about different shows. And throughout my different reviews and commentaries, we've really talked about some really great shows, some not so great shows, and some shows that were kind of just there. And I found this really interesting because it really makes you think like, what makes a good show? Like, how do you make a good show? And led by curiosity, innovation, the quest for the forbidden fruit of knowledge, it brought me to this recent show that I just watched called Sex Education. Now, I'm not quite sure, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not quite sure how many times I can really say the title of the show without this video getting demonetized. So we're gonna see, we'll find out. And if things go south, we're just gonna bleep out the word. So if you're seeing this while the word sex is still in the video, then comment down below that you're early. And I feel like it's definitely not just me who thought Sex Education was a really great show, because the show has also gotten a bunch of critical acclaim, and I even asked a bunch of people in my Discord. This is a quick plug for my Discord. If you haven't joined my Discord, join my Discord. It's a fun time. What their thoughts were about Sex Education, and they were really positive. Like, I was surprised at how positive they were. Like usually for different shows, there's like a varying of opinion. Like, some people will really love it and some people just really don't like it, but the majority of people are just like, meh, it's a show. But for Sex Education, the primary opinion was that the show was good. In fact, it was really good. Of course, I understand like the bias of my demographic being people that would directly relate with this show. But even with that, this being a show about like high school coming of age, while on a smaller scale, it still had a much better reception than some people of the same demographic had with Grand Army, a show that is trying to appeal to a similar audience. So with that said, I kind of want to take a different approach to how I normally do these sort of show reviews, show commentaries, and really just talk about why Sex Education was such a good show. Before we get into anything, if you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on my post notifications so you never miss an upload. It helps out a bunch. So if you haven't seen the show before, or if it's been a while since you've seen it, because the latest installment of the series, season 2, did come out at the beginning of 2020. It's basically about these two high schoolers, Otis and Maeve, who run a makeshift sex education clinic at their high school. And they're qualified to talk about this information because Otis's mom is actually a sexual therapist, and throughout the years of just like living with his mom, he's like absorbed some knowledge and knows a few things that can really help out some of his high school peers. And throughout the 2 seasons, the main theme of the show is the dynamic between Otis and Maeve as they try to manage this clinic at their high school. And of course, a bunch of other subplots take place throughout the show. And like any high school coming of age Netflix show, there is a bunch of drama. And sort of getting into that, sex ed at its core follows a lot of the same dynamics of your regular coming of age high school Netflix show. But as you can tell from this genre of show, there are definitely a bunch of different ways you can execute this to different levels of success. For example, we've seen shows take on like the really self-aware to the point of like cringiness perspective of high school in like Ginny and Georgia, where we've also seen this more edgy, taking itself a little bit too serious form of like high school show in shows like Grand Army and Euphoria. What I find interesting is between these two extremes, sex ed kind of fits somewhere in the middle. It does have its moments where it's a little cringy and a little awkward, but it also does try and tackle some pretty serious themes, and I feel like it does that pretty well. And to really contextualize, ooh, I know, big word. I guess the first reason why the show stands out from like the different shows in its niche definitely has to do with its relatability factor. Sex ed, just because of the nature of the show and its title, really does rip off the band-aid of things that we consider to be taboo, things that we've all experienced but no one has really talked about, especially when it comes to everyone's like pubescent era of like the teenage years where everyone's just so angsty, just so confused, really trying to figure out their bodies, you know, that era. The show really chooses to focus on that area of vulnerability, and I feel like a lot of people really respect that and respond well to that, because not a lot of the shows are willing to really get that in detail and feel like they can really relate on a genuine and personal level to a show. Because the show inherently is awkward. Like, the main character, Otis, is one of the most awkward characters you would meet. And for a lot of people, that's relatable because life is awkward. Like, high school is awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's new. It's constantly changing, but at the same time staying exactly the same. It's just a whole lot of things where you're just trying to find a sense of normalcy. And I feel like the show really encapsulates that and expresses that in a way that's pretty relatable. Whenever Otis or Maeve or any of the other characters have like a really awkward encounter where they're just kind of like, I don't really know what to say to you right now. Like, that really speaks to the audience, or at least it speaks to me, because if anyone's gonna be awkward. But I feel like that sense of uncomfortableness that a lot of the people in the show feel really resonates with the audience, because for a lot of people, they've been through similar situations or they've had very similar emotions. And the show is not afraid of really sitting in that emotion, stirring in it, stewing in it, but somehow making it in a way that is not too uncomfortable or too cringy. Like, I hate to keep bringing it up, but Ginny and Georgia. I feel like the extreme of sitting in that awkward emotion is Ginny and Georgia. And when I'm saying that, I am specifically talking about that damn tap dance scene. There are a lot of things that can just be seen as very relatable in a very welcoming and safe way. And I guess that ties into the fact that a lot of the characters in the show seem to have very genuine stories that people can connect with. Each member of like the main supporting cast has a different character archetype, which I feel like can be applied to a lot of people's different life. Like you have Otis's family dynamic where he's an only kid in a separated household, where he's living with his mom but his dad is kind of estranged. You have someone like Maeve who has a very broken family structure where she's basically raising herself and her parents really aren't in the picture of people that she can really trust. You have Eric who's black and gay but has a set of supportive parents. Then you have someone like Adam who has a set of parents that don't like each other or really him. Then you also have Jackson who has a set of parents who really love him but not each other. And I feel like having such a range of family dynamics really does appeal to a wider audience of people, because it really shows that like no one family is the same and no family is perfect despite how they may look on the outside. And that kind of extends further into each of the characters as people. Each character has their own struggle that they're going with. Each of those struggles seem like things that could actually happen to people and are things that have actually happened to people. Like, well, yes, some aspects of each character's arc are dramatized. A lot of it is attainable. Like, it's like nothing that's like too crazy where you're like, I can't really relate with that. Like, that's not something that could actually like happen. I don't know anyone that that's happened to. Like, most of these things are things that people have actually seen or have occurred in high schools, which really boosts like the relatability factor. For example, you have like Otis, who represents like the traditional like high school awkward kid. Really just tries to figure out how he fits in both in his high school and in his own body. Then that contrasts to someone like Jackson, who's considered to be like the star of high school, who seems to have it all together, but behind the scenes is constantly riddled with anxiety, pressure, and deals with a lot of mental issues behind the scenes. And then you have like the wide cast of LGBTQ characters, each in their own way trying to figure out their sexuality and how they fit into the bigger scheme. Also, could we take a break to acknowledge like how diverse the show actually is? Like, I don't think I've ever seen like a coming of age Netflix show, or really a Netflix show in general, that has this many LGBTQ characters as like main roles that aren't evil, and two kept in the background or to the side. You have like Eric, Ola, Lily, Adam, Raheem, Jackson's parents. Am I missing anyone? Anyone else named that I'm missing? Like, that's at least like 7 named characters in the cast, and while all of them don't really have like their full story arc completed yet, as like there's still like a season 3 on the way, that's a lot of representation. And there's also a bunch of racial and ethnic diversity in the show as well. Like their show is really at a point where there's such like a mix of like cultures and identities, where it doesn't really feel like anyone's like a token, it just feels like a general community, which in that case is generally unrealistic, but it feels nice. It feels welcoming. It feels like a good idea, like where we should be at, because it's not really something that you see to that degree in a lot of different shows in the same niche or just in general. It really breaks down a lot of the stereotypes that Hollywood and different entertainment industries really portray these different identities to being. And transitioning into the next reason why this show is possibly so well received is because sex sells. And while a lot of times it is too much, because these people are supposed to represent high schoolers, and I don't feel like a lot of the things that are shown in the show should really be shown, considering like the ages and age groups that these characters are supposed to portray, which is a whole nother conversation on why shows choose to sexualize high schoolers as opposed to like aging them up and putting it in a college or university setting. But the general point that I'm trying to get across here is that the topic is something that brings a lot of interest for a lot of different groups. Okay, I wanted to expand more on this point. I feel like the show's target demographic of like 16 to 24-year-olds really gravitate to this topic, because just growing up, even as like a Gen Z and even like a millennial, the topic of like sex and like sex education has been something that's been like taboo, been like, oh, don't talk about that, or you're not supposed to do that, abstinence. So like seeing a show that has like a title of sex education is about something that we weren't necessarily socialized to accept is like a big draw, because people are like, oh, I didn't learn that, or I didn't get like a good education in that, I was told like not to partake in that, so let me watch it. That's what I was trying to say. And surprising, the show is actually pretty informative. Like, a lot of the information that they're actually giving is a form of sex education. Like they actually do touch on real sexual health information and advice that can be helpful for the characters in the show, but is also helpful for the viewer watching, because it is a commentary on how bad sexual health is really taught in schools, or the lack thereof of sexual health in different school programs. So like the main focus is not to educate, despite like the name, it is still doing that at the same time, which at least in my opinion is a good thing considering the demographic. The next reason why I feel like the show is so compelling is because basically all the plots in the show really do revolve around the classic trope of love triangles. Like to begin season 1, you have like the love triangle between Otis, Maeve, and her boyfriend at the time, Jackson, and that whole dynamic trying to figure out who's going to end up with who. And might I say, there are a lot of love triangles in the show. Just a recap in the 2 seasons that they've had so far. I wrote this down, so let me read it. You have the love triangle in season 1 between Maeve, Otis, and Jackson. Then you have at the end of season 1 into season 2, the love triangle between Maeve, Otis, and Ola. Then you have the love triangle between Eric, Raheem, and Adam. Then in season 2, we go back to the main starting 2 between Otis, Maeve, and Isaac. Then I guess if you can consider this a love triangle, even though it was short-lived, was Ola, Lily, and Otis. Then the last love triangle that I can find was between Otis's mom, Otis's dad, and then Jacob. That's a lot. That is a lot. And they each take up their own different arc in the show. Now you may be asking, why are there so many? And it's because they work. They naturally bring up so much drama and angst and plot twists that it just keeps you watching to figure out who ends up with who. Then you end up taking sides for who you think should be your OTP. Do people even say that anymore? Is that like an ancient phrase? And these different relationship dynamics make you very invested in the show very quickly. And this show obviously isn't the first show to have love triangles. I feel like every drama, and specifically every Netflix coming of age show, has love triangles. I'm just not sure that any show has this many. Maybe Elite could compete. And the next and final thing that I want to talk about that really makes this show so good kind of relates to what I was saying in the beginning about like coming of age shows in general. This show is not clear of the typical like coming of age cliches. In fact, there are actually a lot of them in this show. You have like the not like other girls girl who's like, I'm so different and I'm just not interested in these things and he would never like me because Then you have like the pick me boy of the show who's like, oh yeah, I can paint my nails and like someone touched my feminine side, but I always say the wrong thing. Why don't girls like me? Along with all the other teenage angst that is just riddled throughout all these shows. What I feel like this show does differently, or at least does better than other coming of age shows, is that it makes it seem authentic. Like a lot of cliches in these other shows seem really inauthentic and just seem forced to be relatable. But I feel like the cliches in this show happen because it's relatable. They're there because they actually do happen in real life. I don't know if that makes sense at all. Like it's just telling it as it is. Like there are people who are like that in high school. And it's showing you the people that are like that. It's not showing you a caricature, it's not making fun of, it's not ironically being like, oh gosh. No, it is saying it like it is in a British accent. And I feel like that's a good thing because it doesn't take you out of the experience as much as an inauthentic cliche would. But yeah, overall, Sex Education was a really good show. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, I think based on some of the things that I've explained in this video, it kind of makes sense why the show is so good and why so many people like it. Of course, there are things that the show did not do as well, or things that it should have talked about or shown a little bit less of, like the explicit sexual stuff. But overall, I feel like it was a really good show and one of the better coming of age Netflix shows. Be sure to leave your opinions down in the comments below because I feel like there are going to be a lot. Let me know if you agree that the show is really good or if you just really hated the show. And let me know if there's something that I didn't talk about or something that I forgot to mention that you feel like really contributes to one opinion or the other. But that's gonna be it for me. If you are new to the channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and to leave a like on this video because it helps out a lot. If you want to see more content from me, make sure to follow me on all my socials here at Imurgency and to go follow me over on Twitch. I stream, or at least try to, 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And check my description down below for my Discord where you can interact with the community and possibly be involved in videos in the future. But other than that, y'all, thank you so much for watching. I've been Imurgency and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.